What's up? What's up? Dylan here. Smash that like button, hit subscribe. I'm going to talk about what would happen if an EMP hit. Would Bitcoin go down? So, a lot of people like to use the apocalyptic end of the world scenario to be like, oh, well, then no one's going to want your Bitcoin and things like that. And part of me agrees, but also part of me disagrees. And I think it's not necessarily the right question or the right thing to be looking into. So, the way Bitcoin works is the blockchain is distributed amongst all the nodes or all the computers on the network. And what that really means is that you could take down every single computer, but as long as one remained, the blockchain could rise again, right? That the blockchain would be stored on that computer, and then as a new computer joins the network, then you get consensus. Now, obviously, it would be a dire situation if that happened, and you have to think about the implications of if that happened. If every single computer on the planet that has the Bitcoin blockchain on it were destroyed by an EMP, by an apocalyptic event, or something like that, the next thing is like, okay, well, like Bitcoin's the least of your worries. And then people start talking about, okay, well, what if I stored food? You know, it's better to invest in food, or of course, this isn't financial advice, food or gold or things like that. And it's like, those are not necessarily bad to invest in, but in an apocalyptic event, those things are heavy. You got to be able to take those things with you. And typically, if there's an apocalypse, right, you've seen the movies, I've seen the movies, people are running around. They're never just like at their house, just hanging out, right? Very seldom are people like able to just chill where they live and like be like, okay, glad I am here. All my gold is stored in my basement so I can use it whenever I need to go to town and buy things. No, that's not really an apocalyptic event. And if it was, then people would be like, oh, they have the gold, I'm gonna go take it. So you can, if you don't believe me, like you don't have to look at like a real apocalyptic event, like you see in the movies. Just look at what happens it has happened in history when an invading force comes to town, right? The people that live there are kicked out. They got to take their belongings, only what they can carry. It's like, think about if your house catches on fire, you can't take everything out of your house, right? The good thing is gold will remain, but if you have an invading force coming in, they're going to come get your gold, right? You have to be able to go back to that place at a later point in time when it's safe to get that gold or silver or whatever it is. If you look at a more recent example was Afghanistan. So they evacuated real quickly, and I think it was on the Pump podcast where he showed a video. Basically, they went to like these old politicians' houses. The former politicians, the Taliban went in, and there was a bunch of cash left. There's a bunch of gold, a bunch of jewelry, a bunch of all this stuff left there because they had to evacuate so quickly. They couldn't take it all with them. They can only take what they carry, and that brings you to another point. It's like if you had Bitcoin, you could take all your Bitcoin with you. You wouldn't have to be like, okay, I'm going to leave this Bitcoin behind or not. Right? You could take every Bitcoin with you. Just memorize your passphrase or bring your wallet or whatever, right? And you can take it with you anywhere in the world because in a localized apocalyptic event, is bad for your gold, it's bad for your food storage, it's bad for anything physical. But if it's digital and the apocalyptic event isn't global or isn't just on that network, then you're going to be fine. You can take it with you wherever you go, and so that gives you tremendous power and freedom, right? If those politicians in Afghanistan had held their wealth in Bitcoin, right, they wouldn't have had to leave any behind, and it's also beneficial, right? If you're getting invaded by someone, then they have nothing to take because you took it all with you. They don't have your Bitcoin, right? Unless they get your key phrase out of your head, they don't have your Bitcoin. You can beam your Bitcoin. You're like, oh shit. Sorry, probably shouldn't say that on YouTube. I don't know how they do the banning and stuff, but you could beam the Bitcoin to your friend over in a safe place and then go get it from them, right? So there's so many different ways you can do that. So it is pretty safe. And, right, say there's an apocalyptic event of some sort, but we still have computers. Well, at some extent, like I wouldn't mind having Bitcoin as long as, it's still relevant because like all the reasons I said, it's like I don't have to worry about carrying it. Someone can't just steal it from me. I can still transact instantly. It's a decentralized system, so we won't have any sort of centralized control acting as the intermediary. I can just send it to this person who has the internet connection and this person that has the internet connection or the computer. And it's very powerful in that sense. So it's almost better in certain scenarios. So the point of this video is just to talk about what you should do, or if an EMP happens, or something like that, right? Will it totally invalidate Bitcoin? And no, it doesn't. I think it strengthens it in a lot of scenarios. And if some mass global event happens, the least of your worries is your Bitcoin. That's just tell friends that talk, they're like, oh, what, if an EMP happens? Well, it's like, well, then we have other problems, right? There's other problems to worry about. And clearly, like, you'd still have those other problems to worry about if your money was gold sitting in your basement and all of a sudden the government turned hostile on you, or an invading country came in. Right? They're going to be able to take your gold. You have different problems to worry about, and so in that scenario, the question is kind of irrelevant, because it's more about how can I survive, right? I'm sure most people would trade almost all their wealth, right, if it meant them and their family's survival, or giving them another chance to fight to live another day. Also, the cool thing about Bitcoin is you have more negotiation power. Versus if you have gold in your basement and you're like, no, you can't come in, and maybe your house is super fortified. Well, they're like, okay, well, we'll just starve you. We'll just blockade you, or we'll just tear your house down and kill you, and then we'll sift through the rubble and get the gold. Versus if you had Bitcoin, they can't do that. So you have negotiation power there. So it's a very interesting game theory, a very interesting concept. If you go check out the latest, I think it's episode 13 of What is Money by Robert Breedlove and Michael Saylor, they go into more in depth on the game theory of the topic of Bitcoin and the scenario of someone wants your Bitcoin, and how Bitcoin is one of the only properties where violence actually reduces your chance of getting a beneficial outcome, versus every other property, like I mentioned, like with gold, they can just like wait for you to die and then go and take it. But Bitcoin is something that you can actually take it to the grave with you, which is very, very empowering. And when you start to think about the implications of that. So no apocalypses, they're not going to destroy Bitcoin. They'd have to have a global apocalypse, and then we have other problems. So your Bitcoin will be safe as long as the network, the only thing that would take down Bitcoin, in my mind, right, is if there was an apocalypse of the Bitcoin network. So that can take different forms, right? That could be perhaps there's a virus that gets distributed throughout the network that invalidates it. Who knows? I don't know if that's possible. Maybe that's the reason. Or some people have brought up quantum computing. And the only way quantum computing, because I keep getting this question asked a lot, one, quantum computing doesn't exist yet, or at least for the general public, for what we're aware of, it doesn't exist. They say, well, quantum computing can hack the encryption on the blockchain. Well, in theory it could, but the only way that would destroy the network, right? Maybe it would create a momentary decrease in value of the network, which would also make the network less viable for attack, because if you have a computer that can hack any system, you probably would go after the ones that are going to give you the best reward that you can get away with. But anyways, it would be an assumption. You have to assume that in order for that scenario to play out and for quantum computing to totally take down or invalidate the Bitcoin network, you'd have to assume that the Bitcoin network couldn't adapt in time to make its encryption so that quantum computers can't break it. And if the Bitcoin system and the Bitcoin network can do that, then quantum computing really isn't a threat to it. Because especially if you can do that before quantum computing comes into existence, if it can fortify itself to where the encryption can't be broken by quantum computers, then the argument is dead in its track. You can have a quantum computer, but if you can't hack the encryption because it's quantum resistant, then you're SOL. So, you'd have to be a scenario, or even if quantum computing came on the scene before Bitcoin was able to figure out how to be quantum computing resistant, which might happen, you would have the only way the network would die is if the confidence lost in that network was so great that it couldn't recover. But if it could recover, right, then a momentary loss of confidence, but then that would be just like a flash crash. And then once the network adjusted and adapted, then it'd be solid and be able to come back, because quantum computing couldn't come after it anymore. So now it's stronger. It's kind of like, what's his name? Doomsday in Superman. What doesn't kill him, or what kills him makes him stronger, because he can't fully die. And so you can't fully snuff it out. It will come back stronger. And so I think that's pretty cool to think about with Bitcoin as a network. So all these scenarios about these what if things, these like future, what if the governments try to regulate it? Well, we saw what happened when China regulated Bitcoin. All the miners left that area because it was a localized, you could consider that a localized apocalypse, right? Full destruction of a certain thing in one area. But as long as there's other areas for it to move to, it will flow to those areas. And because it's digital and the speed at which that can happen, it will. And it'll suffer maybe a little bit, right, of downside, but then it'll spring back up and like just and spring back up and then be better than ever. And then also then you just have now you have an asset. All right, think about this. You have an asset that has a ton of global power, monetary power, being controlled by someone that's not you. So that's a risk you have to take because you're essentially offloading wealth from where you're at to competing countries. They're competing just by nature because if you adopt a hostile stance against Bitcoin, right, and so it moves out of your jurisdiction, it's going to go somewhere who doesn't have a hostile stance against it. And if they don't have a hostile stance against it, then they're competing against you, right? Now they have an asset that you don't have. So you'd have to have the confidence that you can overpower those areas, that they would not be able to gain any ground or leverage against you from that asset. And maybe years ago, Bitcoin was at that stage where that could maybe be possible. But as it is now and as it's growing, each hostile environment to pop up only makes it stronger. It's going to go somewhere else and they'll welcome it, right? They'll embrace it. They'll use those resources to their advantage. And that's something to really think about. And so it's really creating this very fascinating game theory situation where it's like, if you ban it, you have to be so sure that your decision is the right decision or that you have something that can overcome it, or that you're happy just like being hands off and operating how you're operating, which might be what China's doing. Who knows? But if you don't ban it, you got to be like, man, this is a powerful economic resource. You have to be able to leverage this thing because this can give us an edge on the global scales because we can't fully snuff it out, right? It can't be fully defeated. And so if it's going to keep coming back stronger and keep growing, it might as well grow where we're at, right? We might as well harness this power for us versus let someone else do that. So it's a very interesting thing, a very interesting dynamic. So to conclude, smash that like button, hit subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But I think it's one of the most innovative technologies out there, and I think it has a ton of staying power. There's very few scenarios that I can think of off the top of my head that could lead to its collapse. You'd have to have maybe a whole coordinated governmental response from all around the world to be able to really extinguish it. But the chance of that happening, you see how governments can agree on so many things today, right? That's not going to happen. That's just the chance of it happening so low, especially the clock is ticking. The amount of, as it keeps growing and time keeps passing, the ability for governments to actually do that and their argument for doing that diminishes with each day, with each person that buys into the network, it diminishes. So I think what we're looking at is a phase shift on acceptance of it, a realization that if it can't be stopped, right, that it might be better. If you can't beat them, join them. So it's like, all right, we're going to go from trying to regulate it, trying to stop it, being afraid of it, to being like, well, it's not going away and it looks like it's going to keep growing stronger. So instead of trying to shut it down, let's figure out how it can be better because of it, right? And that phase shift, I think it's going to be very interesting, very powerful. We're not quite there yet. Some people are. Actually, a lot of people are. But El Salvador is. But as more and more countries do this, individuals do this, corporations do this, just the potential is just sky high. And so that gets me really excited because my fundamental belief is that it's a technology that can change the world for the better. So anyways, that is my talk on would an apocalypse destroy Bitcoin. So if you like this, definitely hit the like button, subscribe below. And if you're looking to learn more about how to get started with crypto, go check out cryptobusinessaccelerator.com, right? Cryptobusinessaccelerator.com. And that's a place where I help people understand crypto and then turn that knowledge into a business, because education is one of the most important things, in my opinion, for crypto adoption. And the more you know about it, the more informed decisions you'll be able to make. And what they say is Bitcoin changes people. Crypto changes people. It causes you to start reflecting on how you're living your life, right? And causes you to make more strategic decisions for your future. And I think that's a really valuable thing. And of course, learning about investing, learning about money, that stuff is essential. It's something that we have not been taught enough of, at least here in America. And so the more you can learn about money, investing, and how that works, the better you're able to position yourself and your family and to start building wealth rather than losing wealth. And I think that's something that I think we can all agree on, that the more people that are able to do that, the better. So go check out cryptobusinessaccelerator.com to learn more about crypto and learn about how you can start your business. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.